Hello, everybody. This is Kiran Gange, and with me, I have a special guest today, Ezequiel Siller. And he's a good friend of mine. We've worked together in Mexico for a number of years now. So, on this show today, we will talk a little bit about how the Mexican retail industry has evolved over the many years and what the retailers are doing right now, what are they not doing right, and what could be some of the opportunities in the future and how we can proceed with it. Ezekiel, you have a lot of years of experience in this area, more than 20 years in retail strategy. But please go ahead and introduce yourself to your audience today.
Hey, Kiran. Thanks for having me and thanks for listening to me today. Yes, as you were saying, I have more than 20 years. I've been working for more than 20 years in the retail industry in Mexico, working for a large holding company here based in Monterrey, Mexico, where I'm at right now, for a convenience store chain and then for their drugstore division, for their healthcare division. So I've been learning along with them and evolving and understanding the new technologies that arrive as the years come by. So you can imagine there's a lot happening. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of changes that come within 20 years. But it is very, very significant how the most recent years or the last few years, how technology has enabled a lot of the changes that have been going on in the retail industry in the world and also in Mexico.
Yes, I've been traveling to Mexico, Ezekiel, from 2011. So it's been many years now, and I've seen a little bit of how the industry is changing. But you've been on the ground and you've experienced the challenges of retailers. How do you compare the challenges of, let's say, 10 years ago to right now? How does it compare? What has changed is the number one challenges most retailers face?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I would say 10 years ago, retailers were maybe worried about things more towards how to reach or understand what the customer wanted and how to reach them with the capabilities that they had then. Maybe some, I would think, segmentation decisions of how to group their stores to try to reach the customer's needs in a I don't know in a geographical standpoint or from a vocation standpoint. Nowadays, I think the strategy is more based on what one consumer wants and what one consumer and a specific location with a specific situation needs. And that is how data has come to be one of the most valuable assets that companies have in order to be able to do that individual approach that I was talking to you about. So right now, so maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago, what retailers were looking at is see how they could reach the most, or yeah, their potential customers or users with some segmenting strategies. Right now is how can I reach each one of my potential customers individually.
Okay. Do you think the lockdown had a role to play with this transition? How did things change before and after the lockdown, Ezekiel?
Oh, of course, of course. I mean, well, everything changed after the lockdown, after COVID. Yeah, so our mindsets changed. So I think, well, one of the things that changed is that there, I don't know, I don't have the sensibility of the rest of the countries in the world, but uh, in Mexico during lockdown, we became more dependent on technology, on the approach, on how we are contacted as customers by um, companies or by retailers, and also in my experience as part of a retail group, how to reach customers and how to attract them and how to, I don't know, how to have them become loyal to our brands.
Okay.
And again, that is all done through data. I think that is the time when we realized maybe some other companies had realized that before, but that's when we actually came to digest or to realize that we actually need data. And the important thing is data comes from all over. Data is, I mean, we have internal data, we have data from customers, we have data from our loyalty program, we have data from our competitors, we have data that's available online, etc. How do we put that all together? How do we connect the dots? It's an important question that we need to address, so how do we use all that information that's available? And I don't think many of the companies are connecting those dots. I mean, there's a lot of data that's been collected, that's been gathered, but it's used to make decisions like on a need basis and not for actually defining strategy.
Right.
So I think that our mindsets changed after lockdown. We are starting to think and rely more on data. However, we haven't still been able to actually use that amount of data
Okay.
to actually define strategy and not actually to act proactively instead of
Use it.
reactioning to the situations that we can analyze based on data.
Understood. I
Right.
think I think I think you hit the nail right on the head, you know. So earlier there was scattered data, and because of the lockdown, retailers started collecting the data and they started making some use of the data. But right now it is still used on an as needed basis, just to see what happened in the past, but it is not used in a real time environment to make active strategy decisions and actually use upon it, right? So very, very good point. So I'm not sure if you can name any retailers here, but tell me, what are some good uses of retailers using data, and what have been some missed opportunities at a high level, Ezekiel?
Well, I mean, examples of good data or good data analysis being used is, I mean, there's a lot of examples that I could use here in Mexico. There's retailers, some of them are competitors for the company that I used to work for, and some of them are, and or maybe within the company that I used to work for. I mean, pricing is one good example of the use of data. There's also considering after the lockdown, as you mentioned it, where there's a situation of inflation, there's a situation of, as I was saying, individualization, or I mean, being connected to one consumer at a time. And all that is, how do we actually work on what is the price, what is the exact price point that we need to set for any given SKU or any group of given SKUs to actually help, because at the end, perception is really important in the pricing strategies.
Right.
So how do we set what is the price point for a given SKU without sacrificing revenue? How do we, I mean, at the end, pricing is what helps a retailer. How do you become, or how do you bring your customers and make them loyal?
Right.
So I think it's through price. So yeah, so it would be very easy to, at the end, so I'm going to lower my prices and I'm going to bring more customers to our stores, right? But that's, how do you do that without actually risking
Right.
the future of your company? How do you not lose money doing that? So that is, at the end, using data. Another example that I can think of is, well, the promotion strategies, which is related also to the pricing strategies. But how do you understand which are the promotions, what are the sales strategies that actually work, and you continue doing them and stop doing what your customer doesn't want? And at the end, you need to understand your customer. You need to understand what the shopper is looking for, and that is with data. It's, I mean, yeah, you can say, oh, okay, so this is a promotion and it's selling a lot, but what is actually going on in our shoppers' minds? Do they want, would they like to see this promotion again, or are they just buying it because it's available at hand, and they would still be buying if, even if it was at a higher price or something like that? That's another example I could think of. And there's another one, and that is maybe more related to merchandising portion or the category management portion in the store, there's a lot of visual data that's could be generated within the navigating in the store layouts and seeing how customers react to some communication or to some exhibition point or to a planogram or to the layout, and understand those behaviors and incorporating that data that's generated through those processes of observation, and how do you use them again to define your strategy.
Agree. So, in my experience, what I've seen, Ezequiel, I have done pricing implementations in Mexico, in the US, in Europe. What I have seen is, like you said, some companies are doing a very good job of using the analytics to make pricing and promotion decisions. But there are many other companies, especially on the smaller size of companies, where there is a lot of friction between what the analysis is saying and what somebody with 40 years of experience is saying at a senior management level. So it's like, don't tell me how to do my business, I'm going to get it done this way. Or there is a clash between like the buying team versus the pricing team. That's always a challenge we need to overcome, I feel, sometimes in some of these implementations in Latin America and sometimes in Asia also. I see that maybe it's a cultural thing. But you have, let's imagine a situation. I think you would love this role, Ezekiel, given all your experience, your understanding of technology. If I remember right, you also teach in Tech de Monterrey. So if a retailer, let's say an average size retailer, comes to you, Ezekiel, and say that, hey, I've always done retailing the traditional way. Now I'm giving you a clean slate, Ezekiel, and let's do the best of what we can do, right? How would you approach this project? What would come first? What would come next?
So, what you're asking for me to do is to imagine a hypothetical situation in which I'm given like free will to
Yeah.
define.
It could become real very soon, but let's say it is hypothetical for now. But how would you handle it?
Okay, so yeah, I think, and the approach that you were giving to it is cultural wise, and the culture clashes that could come between the different generations. You were saying people who have 40 years in the business and the new generations that come, and how complicated it is to actually bring take decisions, because I mean, maybe some people are used to working in some way, and then the new generations have a different idea of how to work. I think it's a big challenge. I think it's something that needs to be addressed like at the beginning of the venture. But yeah, so what needs to be done is define the company's culture at the beginning. So who are we going to be? Who are we going to be as a company? Who are we going to be? I mean, it might be complicated to bring people from different parts or ends of the spectrum or different parts of the world or different ideas or different age groups and stuff like that. But at the end, there is a culture that needs to be defined as a company. And well, the group of people that at the end ends being part of this group is people who are who make fit or who can adapt to the culture, or who are fit or who fit in this culture, so at the end is hypothetical position. If I would be the leader of this integration process, I would, yeah, so define who we are, and who are people that should come to work with us and actually define our vision at the end. Okay, so we're going to define our culture, and then we're going to define our vision, our values, our mission together as a group. And I would expect that that would be an easier way of actually working together as a team.
Makes sense. So now you answered this question perfectly on how to handle this challenge from an organization, people standpoint, Ezekiel.
Yeah.
Also, from a technology, analytics, and process standpoint, what would be some of the steps you would take to say, for example, there is a retailer with 2,000 stores and let's say 2 billion or 3 billion in revenue, and they've always done things a certain way, but now you have this opportunity to become the best of what you can be in the future, right? So, what would be some of the recommendations to go from there?
So we've been talking about the importance of data at the end, no, and how to use it. So Yeah, so think that one of the first things that we should be doing before actually even defining technology is how are we going to handle the data that we are going to be collecting? You're saying, so there's 2,000 stores. So who is visiting our stores? How often are they visiting our stores? How much money are they spending at our stores? How can we group the people that visit our stores? Um, you were talking about sales, so 2 billion sales. So where are those sales coming from? Is there something that needs to be addressed? So there's a lot of, as I was saying, a lot of points where data comes from. And at the end, we have this huge amount of information or data available. So I think one of the first things I would do is learn how to establish where is that data going to be located and how are we going to connect all the data that comes from different sources in order for us to define who we are, who we want to be, and how are we going to approach our customer base.
Okay.
Um, and then, I mean, that comes with what would be the technology available for us to do that at the end.
Understood.
That's right. I don't know if that answers your question or if
Agree. First, we align the resources we have from a people standpoint, from an organization, from an authority standpoint. Make sure the data is available. Identify the right questions. Where is it that we're looking to go, and how do we get there? Absolutely. And then for each retailer, the challenger must be different, right? So one of them might be looking at gaining market share. Another one might be looking to expand to new stores. Another one might not be making enough margin. So depending
exact
challenge we identify from the
situations they have. Of course, of course.
we come up with or what would be a strategy to go from there. So fantastic. So any quick closing thoughts, Ezekiel, before we wrap up this podcast on what is happening in Mexico? Any suggestions or whatever else you want to talk about? Floor is yours.
Yeah. Well, final thoughts that I would bring to the table. I mean, talking about Mexico and maybe talking about everywhere else. Uh, we need to be aware. We need to be with our eyes open and be aware of what's going on in the industry. It is changing. Change. I mean, it sounds like a cliche, but change is constant. Change is ever present, and I think the new competitive advantage for us as professionals or as a company is we need to lead change. It's not valid for us to just wait and expect change to come and visit us or let us see what changes in the market or what changes in the industry and let me go change behind it. It's we need to be the leaders of that change. Another thought that comes to mind, and we've been talking about it all along, is data. Data is power, and well, and you're only as powerful as how much you can actually make use of that data to make decisions, to define strategy, and again, to lead change. That's what I would think. And another one, the last one is maybe more related to your industry or to your expertise is at the end pricing has become really, really important in what we were talking about earlier in generating loyalty and bringing new customers into our companies, into our business. So how do we use it strategically as a tool to enhance customers and to, I don't know, to make them happy, to satisfy them and to have them come back every time they visit us. So
Absolutely,
those,
absolutely. With data, there's a lot that can be done with pricing, especially with clean data, with interconnected data. You could drive margin, market share, or competitive image or at the same time, with the right analysis in place. But thank you very much, Ezekiel, for your time. And if our audience wishes to get back in touch with you, we will, of course, leave your contact information in the links wherever this podcast is put. But do you have a preference for how somebody might want to contact you?
yeah, I will leave you my LinkedIn URL.
Yep.
That will be maybe the best way to contact me, or I could also leave you my email address as well.
Sounds good. We will include this contact information. Again, this is Ezequiel Siller from Mexico, my good friend, my ex colleague also for now. So thank you very much, Ezequiel. And we are Retail Price Talk. If you find this conversation interesting, there is more to listen to on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, or other channels you might like. But thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Ezequiel.
Thank you, Kiran. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me, and hope to see you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.